What's up, you guys? Welcome to Building the Things. My name's Jesus, and in this video you're going to see me build a super simple workshop table. It's going to look like this or something like it for your table. You're going to use 2 power tools and a handful of simple tools, and you do not have to use these power tools, and I'll give you some examples of that. So overall, the impact, I would say, is one of the most important ones, just because of the kind of screws we're using, or at least I'm using, which is 3-inch construction screws for interior, and the brand is Spax. They don't require pre-drilling, and they come with the bit included, which fits into the impact, and just in general saves time. It's faster, and I like to keep it simple, so hence the impact. For the cuts we're going to make, I'm using this miter box, but you do not have to use a miter box. You can use something even a little bit less expensive, which is a circular saw. And if you like keeping things old school, or it's just not in the budget, you can use things like hand saws. I found this one on sale for $5, and I've never used it, but in case I ever need it, it's there. For other tools you would need, it's going to be something simple like a pencil or lead pencil, or if you want to use a pen or Sharpie, feel free. Measuring tape. This one measures up to 16 feet, which I rarely ever get to that level anyway. You could probably get away with a 6-foot or 12-foot one. A speed square, which is sometimes known as a carpenter square, but because we're not doing any really like miter type cuts, we're just using simple 90 degrees, you don't really need this, but it does help for making your lines pretty clear and crisp, so when you cut, it's easier to see. But if you want to use a ruler and just make a couple dots or some lines and just kind of connect dots, you could do that too. Same thing goes for the measuring tape. If you want to make a chain of rulers and find your measurements that way, feel free to. I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to give you some ideas. As far as lumber, we're using plywood. I used 3/4 inch plywood for mine, just because I find it to be a little bit more reliable than the 1/2 inch and sturdy wise. We're using simple 2x4s that you can get at any home improvement store, and if they don't sell them there, don't shop there, just because you need wood to do woodworking stuff. That, basic math on that one, I think. We're using 4x4, and worst case scenario, if they don't sell them or you don't want to buy a 4x4, they're out of your budget or whatever it is, although they're relatively inexpensive, you can use 2 2x4s together and just screw them together, and then you get a similar dimension but not exactly the same. This would be 3 inches and this is 3.5 inches. So you can do whatever you like to do. For my build, I put mine on casters, mainly because I want to be able to take it outside. That was the whole purpose of me building this workshop table. So I did that. You will see me pre-drill some holes just to show you the difference and the ease of using a drill. But again, you do not have to. I used cabinet screws for the legs. I unfortunately don't have them right now because they're already installed, but I do show them in the video just so you know kind of what I'm talking about. They basically just have a bigger head, so then the screw won't fall out when you put in some pressure. Other than that, that's pretty simple, pretty easy. So cool, let's get some sawdust going and let's get to work. So a good way to measure how tall your table should be, you should put your hand down to about your waist, maybe just bend a little bit because that gives you the sheer drive, and then just kind of measure to that. That's kind of what I'll do here. So mine's about 32-ish. I think it's a good solid area. If you really need more, you can always add layers of plywood or MDF or just some 2x2s or 2x4s or whatever you end up doing with it. But I always figure you can always, it's harder to make something shorter than it is to make something taller once it's already built. And as far as length, I'm thinking you just do 7 feet. I think 7 feet's good. You'll be able to rip plywood on the table saw and everything like that. So, all right. So I ended up cutting these at 30.5. Just got that from a standard 4x4x8, and I'm doing it on the floor because all my workspaces are currently occupied by the crap I moved. By the way, I will be adding casters to mine. They're currently on sale at Menards, and it's these 3-inch ones. So it should look something like this. Little waffle, you can almost see through it. And that just shows you how sometimes the machined edges are not the greatest, and this gives you a nice, fresh, clean edge. Let's just check here which ones are the straightest. I know I bought some that were on the call pile, so they weren't too straight. And sometimes they'll have like this nasty stuff. That's okay. You know, you just put it on the inside. You're not going to see it anyway. And it's going to get beat up anyway. It's a work table, right? It's not a beauty table. Best way to check is just close one eye, look down the pipe, and you see if there's anything crazy warpage. There isn't on this one, so we can just kind of cut it. So if you're wondering, if your lines ever get a little blurred and you're wondering like, how do I make sure that my lines, I know exactly where to cut. Most people use a V shape. Some people use an arrow. I definitely would recommend a V. You basically go from that point down one side and down the other side. And that might be too faint for you guys to see through the camera. That's okay though. It's pretty faint lines. You just get your carpenter square or whatever square you want to, or straight edge. And then I put the pencil on the point. I go down to use the square to hit against the pencil, but not hitting it, just kind of touching it. Keep that same angle, go across, and it gives you a better line to use for reference. Another tidbit is you want to remember which side you're cutting. So in my case, this part is going to be the part that comes off, so I'm going to exit that way. And I'm going to use the blades to go on the other side of that line. And I'm basically just going to kiss it. Nothing else. So you have to decide if you want to just go on the outside, if you want to go on the inside. Me personally, I want to have more than one point of contact. So when I do put them on the outside, even if it's like this, I will have the other lumber that runs across this way. Whatever cross brace I'm going to put this way is going to be long enough to get to here, so I have multiple points of contacts just to give it more stability. I'm just going to go straight raw on the floor because personally that is what I like to do. Now keep in mind that if you don't want to show any ugly sides, you can go through your wood and just look at what's the best looking side and like, oh, okay, I'll use that side. I personally do not care, but maybe you do. And I'll just space them out to where they have to go. Because I usually use these a lot just because they don't require pre-drilling. So I'm going to use 3-inch, no pre-drilling, and a T20 bit. And then you just throw that into your impact. I like to use an impact. You do not have to use an impact. You can use whatever the hell you want. You could bring a square and make sure it's flush and all that stuff. I'm not doing that either. There's a boot. I'm just doing this. Just feeling it. Feel your wood. Get to know your wood, if you know what I mean. All right. Make sure that you know you're gonna add 2 here, at least I am. I'm gonna add 2 here, or 1 here, so I wanna make sure I have a spot where it can go into. So I'm gonna put a 3rd one here and call it a day. Is this perfect? No. We're gonna keep doing it anyway. got your legs in, you got your braces in. So now it's up to you. If you want to do it with your braces inside or with your braces outside. If your braces are inside, like so, then you're gonna have overhang. So I'm gonna go with mine outside, but you can do whatever you want to do. This is your world, I'm just living in it. All right, so again, we're gonna go about 30 inches. So we'll get it up to the, so this is give or take what it's gonna look like. If you like this, cool. If you don't, make adjustments, but I wanna be able to reach over and grab things that are on here. So I might actually make this 28 inches instead. Just gonna give me a little extra, because this will be a little taller if you remember from the casters. All right, guys, so didn't realize my battery died on my phone, so I put these on, this one on, and you could add more to it if you wanted to kind of reinforce it this way. I am not going to. I am, however, going to add some cross members here, going to about 16. If not, I'll do 15 or 14. Just gives it more structural integrity, depending on what I measure out here in a second. You could just do every 16, and like I said, some tape measures are really nice because you get to have these little, you know, kind of highlighted for you, which is kind of nice. So you would just mark out where those are, and then just go on center of that. So that'd be about here. Again, this does not have to be exact. That'd go about there. That would go about there. And about there. And that's it. I'm not going to measure exactly what's center of center or anything like that. So all I'm going to do is just put one as center as I think. Not let it go all the way through. And still, again, 3-inch construction screws. And if you want to get really fancy with it, you bring out your square and square everything up and make sure everything's nice and perfect for you. I won't do it on this side, but I will do it on the other side just to kind of make sure that they're at least linear. But Anyway, with this being said, let's just get these drilled in. One thing I will make sure is that it's flush with the tabletop, just because you don't want some odd bumps in your work. Better to go a little under than to go a little over. Alright, so I went through my scrap pile and I found just a bunch of little 2x4s I had that must have just been from something else, which is why you always keep your scraps. You never know. As long as they're over 3 inches, I usually keep them. Under 3 inches are kind of iffy, but anyway. So what I'm going to do now is just pre-drill a couple screws in them, just so it's easier for the installation, just so I can get the casters all kind of set properly. So let's do that. And this would be the same exact one. I usually tape the bit onto like the box, just so it's always available. You don't have to do that. I just do it because I tend to lose a lot of things. can hold up 100 pounds per. So whatever the bench is, or the table is, excuse me, minus that per each of these. And as you can tell, these would not work. These would just go straight through. So I either have to get a different screw for this, or I have to put washers. So I'm gonna see if I have any washers that fit that and go with that. So as luck would have it, and again, sorry about how horrible I look. I feel just as bad as I look, I think. I don't have any screws that will have enough surface area to really keep the tension on there. And all the washers I have don't, they're just not the right size. So, time to go to the hardware store, which luckily I have an Ace Hardware right next to me. And I could just go pick up that stuff really easily, and I might pick up more screws, because if there's anything about woodworking is you need a lot of wood and a lot of screws. So I guess you don't have to if you do glue, but I don't want to glue it. I want it to be where I can remove it in case I want to do something else with it. So anyway, I'll have you guys go with me. All right, so moment of truth. I found these cabinet screws. They were 30 cents a piece. Sure, they're gonna fit in there just perfect. Good deal, they won't come out. They are pretty thin, but I think they're 10 gauge. Not a big deal, but for your viewing pleasure, I'm gonna just send it and see what happens. Now, should I pre-drill? Probably. Am I going to? No. But I recommend you would hopefully have a drill as well, and that way you can do that too. So because that is going to be your best option. Just so you know. But if money's tight and you're just trying to get started, then money's tight. That's it. All right. Now what we're going to do here is you can get one of your screws if you don't have anything to write with, which I don't right now. And you're just going to put some pressure where you want them. Try to find the center. And then you're just last thing we need is the top, which at Ace Hardware, if you get a full-size sheet of plywood, it's about $40-ish at 3/4 of an inch. If you do that, they can give you rough cuts of $1 per cut. So if you have a smaller vehicle like I do, which is just the Subaru, you still get it in there. You can have them rough cut it for you. For me, it would be easier to have them cut it than to drive with an entire full sheet of plywood on my roof. So I might have them do that. So I asked them to cut it a little bit more just so I can overhang it a little bit. We'll be good to go that way. And the nice thing is, kind of like I said before, so you could have just done this yourself. If you can get that plywood home as a whole, I can't, unless I would have strapped it to the roof of my my car. So I can, I just choose not to. But you could have just done a circular saw and then just rolled it out. Just leave it overhang a little bit, you know, and go about that way. But I wanted to make this video to kind of show you how easy it really is to do stuff on your own. I mean, we used a total of 2 tools, you know, right? And if you really wanted to make this even cheaper, you could just use 2x4s. If you want to use nothing else, and you want to just make the top out of 2x4s. And you know, it'll do the job for you. If you want to make sure that you're going to screw into the 2x4s here, you could do something like if you have another 2x4, maybe similar length, you could ideally line it up underneath with just edge to edge to your primary one, since, you know, that's where we started. You could just show yourself go past this line, and you know, if you get close to that line, you'll be good. So let's do that. Table is done. All right, so I just wanted to show you real quick what the project ended up kind of looking like. Where we have like the miter station, which I'll add a table there for easier feed this way for longer projects, but it will still be portable enough that if I need to move it, I can. And it ended up being a perfect height for the outfeed table here. You can kind of see like it's perfect for outfeed. You know, you want that little divot or that little drop just so you can kind of push it out of the way. So, all right, if you want to get started in woodworking and you have limited tools and everything's limited budget, hopefully you kind of see that it is not impossible. Maybe your material doesn't come out as nice as some of these other, you know, people's material, and you know, maybe your stuff's a little crooked, or maybe you kind of have to work a little harder at getting things all lined up. But that's good. If you learn with the simple tools, when you get the nice fancy ones, they're even better. Not that I have any nice fancy ones, because I definitely don't, but I got pretty good with the cheap miter saw, and now that I have this one, it's better. And if I eventually get something like a Festool or something like that, it's gonna be even better. So if you get good at the basics, that's the foundation. So go mess it up, go make some sawdust, whatever you do, just do it, you know, like Shia LaBeouf said, or whatever his name is. All right, see ya.